Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
Bling blong, everyone. Our new podcast miniseries, Talking Mission Hill, is now exclusively on Patreon.
Put on your spicy pants every Friday with a new podcast covering each episode of the cult series from Simpsons legends Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein.
$5 subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons can hear every episode, plus all of our previous miniseries about Futurama, King of the Hill, and The Critic.
So don't be a Beardsley. Sign up for Talking Mission Hill today.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, home of conspicuous Dr. Robotnik lookalikes. I'm your host, Atomic Townjacker Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever who is here with me today, as always.
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and I'm fighting over a bubbling bowl of sukiyaki right now. Gimme.
Yeah, that sounds good. Today's episode is the Lupin III Part 2 episode, Wings of Death, Albatross. Today's episode aired on July 28th, 1980, nearly 40 years old.
Yeah,
so happy 40th birthday. Lordy, lordy. Look who's 40. It's Lupin III. At least this episode is.
Yeah, he was already 13 when this episode aired. Very late one in Lupin Part 2, and I would bet this episode is the most seen of any classic Lupin episode, at least in the West.
Oh, definitely,
yeah. And yeah, I wanted to do this one as kind of a follow-up to our Castle of Cagliostro one. I thought that was a lot of fun to do, and I did so much research into Miyazaki.
You read books.
I did, yeah. Miyazaki and Yasuo Otsuka's careers on it, that it made me want to watch a regular episode of Lupin. And so why not go with what is definitely the best animated and highest production value of them?
It's real pretty.
and also most famous in America because of the director of it, Hayao Miyazaki.
That's true. And in case you missed that Castle of Cagliostro podcast, we have a free preview of it on the regular What a Cartoon feed. Mm-hmm. And the full version is for $10 Talking Simpsons subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
Yeah, almost 4 hours of chat about that classic film. But yeah, this specific episode, though, I kind of have a long history with it because I guess this I'll mention in the history in more detail, but this was released on dubbed VHS in the U.S. in the 90s, this episode.
I actually didn't know that until I read it in the research. So,
well, I was very lucky that a Hollywood Video was clearly being run by an anime fanboy in my neighborhood.
Oh, we had one of those with we had Urusei Yatsura.
Yeah, that's where I first watched it too, was from Hollywood Video. And this Hollywood Video, they ordered the streamline release of Lupin's Greatest Capers, I believe it's called, and it was just this episode and the other Miyazaki directed episode dubbed over and put on VHS. And you know, I had just seen Princess Mononoke, and on the early internet days, I found out Miyazaki directed the show called Lupin, and you actually can watch these 2 episodes. And then when I go to the video rental store, I'm like, That's it. These are the episodes. Wow. So yeah, I seen these in their primordial dub form over 20 years ago.
I wish, the guy at my local video store was a weeb, but like some of his choices were suspect. Like, oh, it's the Fire Emblem OVA. What is Fire Emblem? There's an OVA and it's bad.
Yeah, that's gotta be a weeb. I watched that once when I bought it before I ever played a Fire Emblem game. I'd like to re-examine that one.
It could be another What a Cartoon. We need to do an OVA episode.
Yeah.
I think, have we done an OVA? Fooly Cooly, we did that 2 years ago.
We did that. So that's the first one that comes to mind. We maybe have done others, but yeah, this is OVA quality, but this was a broadcast episode of a TV show, specifically Lupin Part 2, or also to Japanese fans, they call it Shin Lupin, the series, because it was the new Lupin that came out. And in a way, I do feel a little bad picking this as the episode to define Part 2, because there's a lot of really great episodes of Part 2 of varying animation quality, and they all get put to shame by this one being really a much higher level of production than those.
It's true, and I don't know if they had more money, just more screaming.
It is, I'm sure it was at least a budget thing too. I believe I heard on the commentary for this one on the Amazing Discotheque set. This is in the Lupin III Part 2 Volume 4 box set. You listen to the commentary on it with Mike Toole from Anime News Network. He makes a very good point that this has double the unique drawings that a normal episode of Lupin has.
And so much detail, like in the food and the clutter and just the things you associate with Miyazaki, like lots of people moving around at once.
Yeah, this feels like a training assignment to push people to animate things they wouldn't normally draw and hold them to a certain standard, which, resulted in some of the best animation of our childhoods, both in anime and in international productions. And this episode, too, for me, is really the story of how TMS became the TMS we gush about all the time.
We worship at their feet. Please see the last, 100 episodes of the show.
Yeah, anytime, even if it's an episode not animated by TMS, like on our Superman one, I still will take time to say, and obviously TMS animated the best looking Superman episodes, if you didn't know. So I'm going to speed through the origin, though, because we went deeper into that, into even you can hear it all in even the free preview of the Cagliostro podcast. But short version, 1965, comic creator Kazuhiko Kato, under the pseudonym Monkey Punched, created a takeoff of the classic gentleman thief Arsène Lupin to tell action comedy stylings in the James Bond archetype. And Lupin wasn't alone in being a copyright-breaking descendant of characters. He was with noir-style gunman Jigen, stoic samurai Goemon, femme fatale Fujiko, and being chased by the dogged Inspector Zenigata. And there just was so much fun and silliness in even the original stuff, even at its most dated and problematic from the mid-60s. I'm just going to steal this from our friend Paparina and his amazing knickknacks videos on YouTube. The past was a mistake.
Yes.
That's just
I apologize for coming from it.
We all failed by doing so.
Although this episode is older than me by a few years. So
Just a couple, yeah. So the comic is doing very well. The animation studio subset of a bigger company called Tokyo Movie decides they want to adapt it. They hire on animator Yasuo Otsuka and several others to make a pilot film. And Otsuka, especially as an animator, helps define how Lupin moves and is adapted to animation in a way that Monkey Punch would say, I couldn't have ever imagined it working this way. And Otsuka, it was a big deal for him because every cartoon in Japanese animation at the time was for kids, or at the very least, you could have an all-ages story that could get a little grittier, like the Little Norse Prince that Otsuka worked on, but you couldn't do something fully for adults, or it was very rare.
No bottomless Fujiko.
Exactly. You couldn't have boobs
I saw
hanging out.
one nipple in this episode.
And you also couldn't shoot guns or have all these realistic guns. All the stuff Otsuka loved to draw, like fancy cars, realistic guns, explosions, murder, the things Lupin did so well. And I think people need to recognize, that it was very revolutionary once they were able to get a Lupin show on TV in 1971 for 23 episodes. It pushed the boundaries of what an adult animated cartoon could be for Japanese audiences and had a profound effect on a generation of otaku who were like, oh, cartoons can be this. I grew up watching, Astro Boy, and now I can see a guy get shot in the face and then Fujiko's boobs all in one night.
So it's like The Simpsons, but with more violence and nudity.
Yes, yeah. And so they sell the show. They get commissioned to do 26 episodes, but they are low rated and there's giant problems from the start. They replace the director. Otsuka suggests they hire on 2 animators he had mentored at Toei Films, Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata. They take over directing of the show, and they do incredible work readapting Lupin and making him like less violent. It was less cruel to Fujiko and made her more of a person instead of just like a backstabbing liar of a woman who has her clothes ripped off all the time. Stop doing that so much, though. That does happen in this episode.
Yes.
But and yeah, Miyazaki especially, like, he took a real interest in Lupin being a thief of the people. Like, it was, Miyazaki was all about class and how Lupin, who he stole from, revealed things about class. He became much more of a Robin Hood character under Miyazaki instead of just like a guy who just killed people and cackled as he drove away with their money. So the show, unfortunately, really fails. It does not do well. They cancel it before the final 3 episodes are done. So it's only 23 episodes of the first Lupin show. The president of TMS, Miyazaki remembers him apologizing to the staff, like, we really failed with Lupin. I'm so sorry. And so they go their separate ways. Miyazaki and Takahata go to work on other things while Otsuka sticks around TMS working on content. But then by 1977, Tokyo Movie has changed a lot, including they have grown to the point that they have now recreated themselves as a new corporation, or Shinsha, and so they renamed themselves Tokyo Movie Shinsha.
And all these years later, they're still new.
They're TMSing everywhere. But so Tokyo Movie in 1977, they are seeing that the reruns of Lupin are doing so well that they're able to sell a new series 5 years later to broadcaster NTV. And so they are reborn as a company. Like, they had grown a lot in the 5 years in between. They'd had few minor successes, but Lupin now was ready for a new chance. And, the co-founder of TMS always had a soft spot for Lupin, so he was going to commission more of it too. And a major addition when they restarted part 2, well, they didn't get back Miyazaki, Takahata, or Otsuka at the start, but they did get jazz composer Yuji Ono to write the soundtrack, and that's when they got the amazing opening. Like,
it's never changed, that tune.
The embellishments of it feels new every time, but yeah, just like da da, like that is iconic to me as the James Bond theme. It was being made in reference to.
I'll say it's better.
I think it's better too. Yeah,
the James Bond thing is like James Bond. He's James Bond.
It's much more. The Lupin theme is just much more playful and fun. Like do, especially like the breaks it can take and how there's sections that speak to different characters as well. It's just so much fun, and it really sets the tone for what you're gonna get. It also was going to be a huge undertaking, though, this part 2 series they were starting up, because they were going to do something that was apparently very little done at the time, but is now the norm for anime broadcasts, or became the norm in the 80s, which was they were going to do no reruns. They were going to have a new episode every week, 155 episodes of Lupin Part 2 that aired. 3 weeks they took off, and those were for like holidays or the elections. Those were the only times they took a week off.
Now we're back to such small orders for episodes, like 12, not even 13. 12 seems to be the norm for so many series.
Well, because then the 13th can be the OVA with the boobs in it that you sell.
Hot Springs.
That way of working is destructive, honestly. And people were remarking more about like, oh, Dragon Ball Super, for example, was sticking to the same like never miss a week thing, and people were just screen capping like, oh boy, maybe they should have missed a week.
That's a sloppy Goku.
That wasn't the case though for Lupin Part 2. They wanted to have a new episode every week, but TMS wasn't that big. They did have an internal team, but not the kind that could build a series that many episodes that quickly. Though on their internal team included one of the key animators on the opening, Yuzo Aoki, who would go on to be the series director and character designer for the Pink Jacket series after this. So Aoki gets a lot of work on this. But so instead, they worked with companies like many unnamed, but also big name ones like Topcraft and O-Pro, who did a lot of, for hire work to make Lupin episodes that were of varying quality. But then they saw the instant success that part 2 was. TMS is like, we need more internal art teams. We need more internal animation teams. So they set up what was originally planned to be their B studio full of rookie artists called Telecom. So Telecom was going to be their B studio doing stuff, and their first job was to do The Mystery of Mamo, the first Lupin film in 1978, and they got back Yasuo Otsuka to animate on that. And what Otsuka found out was that hiring a bunch of rookie animators is a mistake if they are incredibly directionless, and he felt that they were not up to his very high standards. And like Otsuka, I watched a whole documentary about what a born teacher he is and how he's an amazing animation teacher. And he had, Miyazaki was one of the many people he mentored at Toei Animation, and he did the same when he worked on the first season of Lupin. Now when he comes on to the Telecom staff, he's trying to do the same, but it's very rough. Like he says, there's 2 episodes that he just fully redid the Ginga on, and the key animation was like, oh, it's the worst work I did in my life. It's terrible. So
is Telecom, are they forever a part of TMS?
So eventually Telecom is the internal studio name, and eventually it just gets called TMS Studio. Like they rename it to make it more clear when you hire TMS, you're getting the Telecom team. Telecom is the roots of the great TMS animation we all love, but it was Telecom for the longest time in its building years. And so while working on Mamo with the Telecom folks, it's why too, if you look at how many ones Telecom did of the series, they actually only did like 11 episodes, most of them in the second half of the 155, because they were too busy with Mystery of Mamo and then the Castle of Cagliostro as the main animators on that. And so that, I think, too, is how they were having trouble learning, because they were sent straight to work on movies instead of on the TV budget. So Mamo, despite Otsuka feeling it was kind of rough, it got demanded a sequel within 3 days of it coming out in theaters. So Otsuka turns to his animating buddy, Hayao Miyazaki, hires him away from Takahata. He breaks up the Miyazaki-Takahata team. But also, Otsuka had been working a little on the side on Miyazaki projects like Future Boy Conan and Anne of Green Gables. And there, he met several talented animators that he was like, oh, I'm going to just headhunt you. Like, I'm going to take you. Like, he was able to convince TMS to spend the money and invest in Telecom to hire folks he and Miyazaki felt were the future of animation, like promising folks. And so they pretty much hired away like some of the best people from the other Lupin studios, as well as away from like Anne of Green Gables or from folks who worked on Future Boy Conan. And they were staffing up there. And so Telecom very quickly went from a staff of rookies to Miyazaki and Otsuka's like favorite promising young animators of the late 70s. They produced Castle of Cagliostro. It is viewed as a financial failure at first. And so Mike Toole put it this way in the commentary, that it sounds like, to a degree, as an apology. Miyazaki's like, I'll stick around and animate 2 episodes of the show as like a whoops, like we can work on the show since we're all together here right after we finish Cagliostro. And so when Telecom starts working on episodes, Miyazaki's team is animating on all of them, but he even takes over as director on 2 episodes. And those 2 episodes, he actually credits himself as Terukamu. Like, he has a pseudonym on it. He doesn't even want to be known as directing it.
Of course, he hates them, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah. I have some quotes in a second.
I know that fact.
He definitely hates these. But so when I look at these episodes and all their tasks to do, this one, and I rewatched the 155, the final episode, I wanted to do this one because this is a more classic Lupin. 155 is the final episode of part 2 and really meant as a reflection on the whole series. But in both cases, they feel like testing grounds of both Miyazaki's ideas and also just like assignments of, like, I'd seen Otsuka in his documentary give people assignments of like, well, how would you jump off of a diving board? Like, do that. And so there's scenes in here that feel like they just embellished a moment just of like, could you draw dozens of cops busting out of a boat? What would that look like?
There's so much flying in this episode too. It's like such a telltale Miyazaki thing of like realistic Warcraft.
I mean, the more confident Miyazaki got as a director, the more he embellished in the things he loved. And the chief among them are airplanes. Like, he just loves flight. What would have been his final film was all about flight and the dreams of flying. And so Miyazaki directs and writes. He, like, you know, at this point he was pretty much just boarding everything he directs. Like, he had basically done all of that and the layout on every episode of Future Boy Conan, and now was doing it again on these shows. And these 2 episodes would be his final television work, and I would bet he never will do a TV thing again.
I mean, he's 80 now. So.
Yeah, Miyazaki, even at 39, he was saying, like, TV production sucks, it kills you, and also he felt that it was seen as too disposable by viewers. Like, he'd worked so hard on these things, and the viewers were like, I'll just change the channel. It's another TV show.
That is insane. Like, he was a seasoned animator. He's like 40 now, and like he starts doing the Ghibli stuff we know when like he's in his 40s. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's well, I think I view now, especially after doing this, I view Ghibli as his midlife crisis. Like,
like I gotta do something.
And so, you know, like, these episodes are so well animated. They look better than the opening, like on just a quality level.
The opening looks cheap compared to, I mean, I think it is like a cheaper opening than what I'm used to, especially compared to like the first one, where it's like a lot of like well drawn but still like very static things and using style more than moving parts.
That's true. So but I mean, the animation in this looks like better than a 2012 Lupin cartoon would.
It does,
look,
yeah.
You know? Yeah, some of the top animators on this, I talked about them on the Cagliostro one, but I'll bring them up too here. Atsuko Tanaka and Kazuhide Tomonaga. The biggest parts of this that I love the most in this episode are done by Tanaka and Tomonaga. Like, they are such superstars now. Now I just want to live on the Sakuga collecting pages of like, everything Tomonaga and Atsuka did. So they do 145, then they do 155 as a finale. I did watch it, and it's really interesting for what it foreshadows because of both Miyazaki and TMS. I mean, also the episode is pretty much a Miyazaki repudiating the episodes and style of Lupin he does not like, because the episode is about people pretending to be Lupin, except they're very evil. And they kill people, they steal, they don't care who they hurt. And then by the end of it, Lupin shows up and he's like, you guys are frauds. I'd never do that.
I did notice in this episode that it's fairly, so it is sexier than I think anything Miyazaki has done in terms of like Fujiko is pantsless and people are ripping her clothes off and stuff. You see a breast. But also it does fit in with his style in that like there's not a lot. I mean, I don't think anyone is murdered. There's no murder. Like everyone escapes. Like the fact that like everyone escapes in this safely, even the villain. Like I assumed the villain was going to blow himself up, but it doesn't happen.
I fully expected it. I had forgotten he doesn't. But also in 155, there are bits too, like the villains in it are an overzealous military who Lupin is trying to tell them, like, don't shoot. This is in a civilian area. Don't shoot.
Well, I mean, you don't have to be Miyazaki to make an anti-nuke message, but it does feel like part of his brand, you know?
And also in the finale, episode 155, there's an Akira bike slide, like TMS does that in it. And also there's a female character who, if you remember in Cagliostro, I mentioned that the woman in it, the actress playing Clarice in Japanese, she would be Nausicaa. She'd continue on Nausicaa, and the character's basically proto-Nausicaa. Well, if you imagine the in-between of Nausicaa and Clarice, the female star of episode 155 is that, and voiced by the same woman again.
Okay, I gotta watch this now.
And at the same time as he's working on these episodes, Miyazaki is planning out, like, image boarding his idea for the Nausicaa manga that he'll start publishing in 81. So he's working through all these things, and there's murderous robots in it who look exactly like the ones from Lapida, like not even a slight difference.
Okay, so that's the finale of Lupin III Part 2?
Yes,
wow,
yeah.
okay.
And it was his way of saying goodbye to them because As Miyazaki put it in a 1984 interview, he was incredibly disappointed with what he did on this and Cagliostro. He thought these episodes sucked. He said that he had left fans of his disillusioned by what he had created. He described himself as a middle-aged guy who was trotting out everything he had done before. And he also said of the production, quote, "It was hell."
Oh.
So...
I mean, he is a much older man than us, of course. I always feel like it's a bad look to insult your own work because if people like it, you're also insulting them.
Yeah.
So it's not a good look in general.
That's the Miyazaki we love. I've come to tolerate, I guess. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much great animation in this that even if he wants to say, like, I wish he said, I feel I failed myself, but everyone working under me worked so hard and did great work.
Yeah, also, if you put down your own work, anyone who helped you is also part of in the crossfire there.
Which, again, I just rewatched 155 as well. It's an amazing finale to the show. It also, in that episode... You said it in Cagliostro that Fujiko's undercover outfit looked like April O'Neil. In that one, she's wearing that same outfit, except it is yellow with brown hair, so it is exactly April O'Neil. They just ripped that off.
Secret April origins.
But yeah, I think Miyazaki felt that there was just a real lack of originality in his work. He felt the more charitable thing I'd seen him say in a different interview was just like, I'm paraphrasing here, but Lupin is about the hungry spirit of work, of youth. And you need young people to work on it. And he'd outgrown it. He felt I was too old to do stories with Lupin anymore that really resonated with me. I think he couldn't see himself as Lupin anymore.
This is not closely related, but when we talked to John Vitti for Talking Simpsons, Simpsons writer, obviously, John Vitti, wrote Mr. Plow and other things. Something he said like haunted me, and he's just like, oh yeah, comedy's hard to do after you're 40. And I was like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
And the jewel on my hand started blinking. I was like, I got 2 more years to be funny.
We're fucked after that. These podcasts will still be good. But though, okay, when he also says it was hell, I want to think about what his really working thing was then too. He's really getting tired of doing TV animation. He's stuck at TMS. He's, teaching all these kids, and Otsuka is a great teacher. In his own documentary, Miyazaki's producer says like, oh, Otsuka's 10 times the teacher Miyazaki is. Miyazaki sucks at teaching. But here's Miyazaki in this training role at Telecom, so he's probably pretty frustrated with that. And clearly, he's getting sick of animation because he's working on Nausicaa, and he'll sell Nausicaa and be working on that at the same time as the intense work on this. Not to mention, this is a whole other podcast, but at the same time he's at TMS, he's the first director on the Little Nemo film.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, and in 81... the dream shortly, the co-founder of TMS, he loved Little Nemo and dreamed of making an animated film for Little Nemo. He'd wanted that since he founded the company. And so from basically 81 until its release in 89, he worked with a million major names in animation and beyond to try to make a Little Nemo movie. And everyone like Brad Bird worked on it. Chuck Jones worked on it.
The Sherman Brothers.
Isao Takahata, Yoshifumi Kondo, the late Yoshifumi Kondo as well, and Hayao Miyazaki. All worked on it, and pretty much all of them kept telling him, like, this just doesn't work. It doesn't work as a film. Nemo can't grow. He doesn't change. It's kind of boring.
I watched it we did a Retronauts about the NES game, which included a chat about the movie. I think you were on that, Henry. I love that episode. We talk more about the history there, but yeah, like if you remember the NES game, Little Nemo the Dream Master, very fun but very hard game. It is based on the movie you never saw.
Yes.
Which was available at the time, but nobody cared. And I follow TMS on YouTube, and you should too, because they post whole episodes of things, but like occasionally be like, how about a Little Nemo song dubbed in Portuguese? Like they do still post Nemo clips in different languages.
No, and when you watch it, the standard of animation in Nemo in the eventual film that was released, he's really good, but it's hard to watch it. You can't watch it in one sitting.
But at least it pushed them into television to make it better for like 5 years.
Yeah. Well, so so Miyazaki in 81, they want him to work on Little Nemo. He's getting very frustrated by that, and he wants to work on his own things. And I think the breaking point for him really was that right after this, and I see these episodes as training for what they'd start working on a year later, Sherlock Hound.
Oh, yeah.
The Miyazaki's team at Telecom, under his direction, would make 6 episodes of Sherlock Hound. They were the first ones to work on it. And then they find out in 81, like, whoa, this is planned to be an international release. So now they're thinking about it for the first time ever. They find out Arthur Conan Doyle's estate is going to sue them dead if they release this.
There's some kook named Doyle on the phone. What's his story?
Well, for them, like, they didn't give a shit about the Lupin. They did 200 episodes of Lupin without caring about copyright there. So maybe they figured they could do the same with Sherlock Hound. You know, Miyazaki, once Sherlock Hounds get canceled, that's when he's just done. Like, he resigns and he is committed to working on Nausicaa, and then that slowly builds into its own thing. Though I did find out something I didn't know until this research too, was Miyazaki got offered to come back to Lupin one more time by Telecom in 1983 to direct another movie. And Miyazaki turned it down. He's like, clearly he was working on Nausicaa and was seeing the build to the 84 release of Nausicaa was coming, but also he just didn't want, he was done with Lupin. He suggested that Mamoru Oshii direct it, and Telecom didn't do it.
Who's this Oshii guy? Sounds like a loser to me.
What a failure. I mean, if this was 83, then it was right after Oshii had directed Beautiful Dreamers. So,
okay, I was going to ask, like, when he directed that?
But it didn't happen. That was the last time Miyazaki was offered Lupin. He was asked in a 2002 U.S. screening. I believe Spirited Away, some nerd in the audience was like, "You gotta come back to Lupin?" And he's like, "I leave that for everyone else. That's not mine. I'm done with that."
Oh, man, I'd love to see, like, an 80-year-old Miyazaki make a Lupin movie now.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
oh,
God.
man.
But yes, thanks to the work on this episode and what Miyazaki and Otsuka and others grew in that studio, and like they taught a generation of animators to be great at Telecom. It led to amazing things like that. Their teaching and their work style made the TMS animation that we know and love. Like this generation who worked on this in 80, they would grow into the people who by 88 made Akira, like that, or would make all of our favorite Japanese production American shows like DuckTales, Tiny Toons, Batman, all the greats. Thanks to the training on this. Without these episodes, I don't think we would have had the great animation from TMS that we'd get in the future.
I never knew the story of Telecom.
Yeah.
I noticed that, like, we did an episode about the Harley Quinn series recently, and I was looking up some of my favorite episodes after that, and I was looking at the later ones, the ones that were on WB, and, like, they're almost all done by Telecom. So I guess, were they crediting themselves as Telecom and TMS at a certain point?
It kind of gets mixed up. Like, sometimes you will see animation services by TMS Studios, and sometimes it'll say Telecom. But, I mean, by the mid-90s, they were just synonymous. Like, if you were Disney or Warner hiring TMS to do something, you were getting Telecom, or at the very least, Telecom, who would then freelance out things to Korean studios or other Japanese studios.
Maybe they were like, this sounds less foreign than Tokyo Movie Shinsha.
Yeah, also that. Yeah,
that could help them internationally.
And yeah, the just lastly, I want to mention the U.S. release of this for the longest time was the dubbed episodes from Streamline Pictures that came out in the mid-90s from Carl Masick. I have been corrected on that. I have said Makek so many times, but a friend of the show, Thad Komorowski, who once interviewed the late Carl Masick, let me know that's the right way to say it. So thank you, Thad. But he was able to license these 2 episodes that Miyazaki directed. By that time, he had lost the Nausicaa account. But he knew that Miyazaki was big, and he also did get Cagliostro, but then lost it. But I believe on VHS, this came out around the same time as Mamo and Fuma. Those 2 movies as well were out. And so for the longest time, those are the only Part 2 episodes available in the U.S. I mistakenly thought all Lupin episodes looked this good. So I was in for some disappointment when Adult Swim got the broadcast rights to Part 2 in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and that's when, like, we really first saw the real series. And then they only dubbed, 27 of them?
I think so, yeah. Well, now you can watch dubbed and subbed of the Part 2 on, like, streaming services like Crunchyroll or Hulu, but only the first half of the series. The final 80 episodes, they are only subbed on there. And I think the only dubbed episodes of the last 80 from the 2000s dub team were the ones for these 2 episodes. They did dub those.
What a weird fun time on Adult Swim where it'd be like Lupin followed by Case Closed.
Man, TMS was owning it then.
That's true. Yeah, they're also TMS, Case Closed.
Yeah,
Conan.
And the Lupin in general, it trained all of it. Part 2 trained all of its animators how to do action comedy, and like these were the skills that made the action in Batman the Animated Series look so gorgeous, or the comedic timing of Plucky Duck's tongue dissolving comes from this kind of stuff. Even pieces of shit like Inspector Gadget, incredibly improved by having TMS work on that.
You're putting a line in the sand there.
Look, all right, there's worse things than Inspector Gadget.
I personally didn't like it as a kid.
When Inspector Gadget came on Nickelodeon, I wouldn't turn it off because Nickelodeon was the channel I watched all the time.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
I'd watch Lassie, but
I'd still be like, Inspector Gadget.
It was too formulaic for me at 5.
Yes, yeah. Scooby-Doo was incredibly novel by comparison to the formula of Inspector Gadget. I guess also it just frustrated me that like he always got to steal the credit. It really made me mad.
It bothered me, like he interacted with no one. You know, he just kind of bumbled around and was assisted the entire time.
But in my larger string theory about its connection, Inspector Zenigata and Inspector Gadget, not too different from one another.
He's a less tan Zenigata.
Though Miyazaki, he made Zenigata much less of a joke in his episodes. But, well, I guess we'll talk about that after we take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Wings of Death, Albatross.
They say it takes a thief to catch a thief.
Did someone say something about a setup?
But don't tell that to Interpol's most famous officer, Inspector Zenigata.
I knew it!
Hot on the trail of the greatest thief of all time.
Nowhere to run, Lupin. It's the end of the line.
Lupin III, together with his accomplices, Jigen, partner in arms, Goemon, legendary swordsman, and Fujiko, master of disguise.
What? Fujiko?
They circle the globe, dodging the heat and looking for the next big score.
I got a feeling I can't lose no matter what.
Punks thought they were dealing with amateurs.
Lupin III, Monday through Thursday at midnight. And the best thing about it, everything's free.
Sometimes I'm even better than I think I am.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Break. It's Henry Gilbert, and I sent you a message warning you I'm going to steal this podcast.
And hey, everybody, it's Bob Mackey. I'm a fan of the rare plaid jacket Lupin from 1994.
We hope you guys have enjoyed hearing us chat about Lupin once more. If you haven't heard the Castle Cagliostro one, I think you'd enjoy that too. And you know, we wouldn't be able to do this and talk about the Master Thief of Anime without support from people at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
That's right. If you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and sign up at the $5 level, you get all these episodes 1 week at a time and ad-free, and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes all of our limited miniseries. To date, those have been Talking Critic, Talking of the Hill, 2 seasons of Talking Futurama, and our most recent one was Talking Mission Hill. We went through all 13 episodes of Talking Mission Hill and also the lost episodes using the Talking Simpsons /What a Cartoon treatment, and there is going to be another series coming in the fall of 2020 that is just for $5 patrons. There are so many podcasts behind that $5 paywall, and you'll access all of them immediately the second you sign up for $5 at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you sign up for $10 a month, you'll get all that stuff plus one mega long podcast once a month about a movie that is only for patrons of that level or higher.
That's correct. The What a Cartoon Movie is our $10 a month treat for premium patrons at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You get to hear every month in the free feed the extended preview of it, but if you want to hear the full, often over 4 hours chat about a different animated feature film once a month, you got to sign up at the $10 level at Patreon. This month, we're going to be doing The Black Cauldron, the Disney flop. Before that, we did Space Jam, the Michael Jordan Bugs Bunny team-up film. And we've done so many more, over 80 hours of podcast to hear before that. And that includes our Lupin III Castle of Cagliostro one. And if you love all this other Miyazaki talk, you should also check out the one we did for Kiki's Delivery Service and tons more. So please consider going up to the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it's so easy to do. And once you do, you're given a code. You have access to that code at all times, and you just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And that way you can download our bonus podcast alongside your free ones as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And there's also a great app for any smart device that Patreon has. You can use that to access our bonus podcast as well. But either way, it is so easy to access all the stuff we have going on behind the paywall at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So thanks again for supporting us there. And now let's get back to Wings of Death, Albatross. Okay, so the opening of this episode and the ending, those Miyazaki didn't touch, but they're pretty great on their own. This version of the opening is the 1980 version of it, if you're looking up its specific style.
Yeah, I forgot there were different versions of this for this series. It starts off with like the vibraphone, and then it gets a lot better. I had to look that up. It's a vibraphone. It's like, is it a xylophone? Is it a marimba? No, it's a vibraphone.
And the song still is the greatest. And it even inspired Tank. The Cowboy Bebop opening is so great because Yoko Kanno was emulating what she loves so much about Ono's compositions on this. And the opening shots have a lot of animation from Yuzo Aoki, who again would go on to head up the Pink Jacket series, which less popular and weirder, but cool.
Yeah, I forget who was doing this a while ago. Some anime person I follow just posting freeze frames of the Pink Jacket series. They're just so over the top. It looks so fun. A lot of Coke energy to that Lupin.
Oh yeah, I mean that is the spirit of the 80s right there, which every Lupin series should reflect the time it was produced in. That's what I love about the new Lupin series. They set it now, And also the OP, this has so many cool shots in it. A couple I want to shout out was Goemon's Oni outfit, so cool. And Jigen I love the shot of Jigen holding the umbrella while sitting on the car they're driving away in.
I like that, just like that slow, cool walk towards the camera in the credit sequence. It's neat.
And Fujiko's dancing is really cool, as is the chase with the hand puppets. That's such a great shot, too. And her lipstick bullet that ends the shot.
I was like, oh, you're going to ruin that gun, Fujiko. What are you doing? And then it becomes like the little marker in the kana for
so
Lupin
cool.
III.
And so this is the 40th anniversary of it. And I think I saw people suggest, they don't know this for sure, but in Cagliostro, they had a planned scene of a mid-air dogfight between the autogyro and another plane. And it's possible that it grew out of that idea this episode. It begins with a lovely countryside shot, just like of the many we saw in Castle of Cagliostro as well. Then we cut to all of our characters except for Fujiko hanging out like in a dirtbag trailer eating like sukiyaki.
I love their stubby little trailer. The sukiyaki is amazingly detailed. And of course, Jigen and Lupin are fighting over the meat.
Yeah.
Not quite as detailed as a spaghetti fight, but still very, like, more than you'd see on a normal TV episode.
Oh, yeah. I think it's meant to be a sequel to the spaghetti fight. Atsuko Tanaka apparently isn't even credited in the animation in this, but nobody else drew that food. Like that I feel 100% certain it's her.
I don't even eat meat, and I was getting hungry looking at that sukiyaki.
I think it's meant to be a sequel to the spaghetti scene, because this time they're fighting over it. It's a Lupin Jigen brawl over food, but this time there's a third party in Goemon who steals all of the meat, and he only eats meat. Mike Toole in his commentary, I want to mention another cool thing he pointed out, that the trailer, I just see the trailer, it's attached to his Mercedes-Benz. So it's another of these moments where Miyazaki wants to show the high and the low together. This like fancy Mercedes-Benz car next to this like shitty little trailer that the characters are hanging out in. And the bubbling sukiyaki bowl just looks so good. Though it also, to me, has the feel of late night animators making a thing because they're staying at the office.
At their desk.
Yeah.
Like a little hot pot.
Yeah. Well, if you've seen the Making of Spirited Away special, they have a bit where it's like Miyazaki makes dinner for everybody one night.
Yeah.
And he just has a giant pot that he's just like, okay, give me 20 packs of ramen noodles, drop. And then he's adding more stuff to it. I'm like, that's just like the sukiyaki bowl that they have in Lupin.
So it's all just sodium and carbs, no delicious meats.
And then after he eats all that, he then smokes like a chimney as well.
Pounds his heart back into life.
I mean, the ashtrays in this show, like I was grossed. The food looks so tasty, and then they show Lupin like sniffing over, like, oh, that smells good. And he's got a cigarette in his mouth.
It was a different time. Like my parents were smokers. Like everyone in my family smoked. Every person I knew smoked. I've not been near an ashtray in like over a decade. It's great.
The smell of it disgusts me.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. But it was just the thing to do. You'd be in 1980. You probably, especially in Tokyo, you're probably thought of as a weirdo for not smoking.
Well, it's like if you're an animator, you're malnourished, you're about to fall asleep, you need some sort of stimulant to keep you going. Addiction will wake you up. Like, give me more.
Yeah, and also, if you fall asleep, you might burn something. So it's like, okay, got to stay awake to prevent something from catching on fire. It also felt like a very dirtbag cooking technique of pouring beer into the sukiyaki.
Yeah, Lupin is annoyed by that. It's like, hey, you're ruining it.
I love it. It's like, I hate it. Like he puffs out his cheeks. It's really funny. But yeah, so one of the few clips I have on here, I wanted to compare the sub and dub in this interesting scene. And this is not the streamlined dub. This is the 2000s dub. But this is them fighting over the meat. And it starts when Jigen pours the beer into the pot. So first we're going to hear the English version, and then you can compare it to the original Japanese version, which again, Yasuo Yamada, the voice of Lupin, my all-time favorite, Japanese voice actor, I think.
Thanks. Ooh, nice vintage. Leave that alone.
Trust me, you never had it so good.
My, aren't we touchy? Hey, give me that. Hey, you could save a little for Fujiko, you guys.
よく聞いてんなあ、やめろよおい
この方はコクが出るんだよ。
おいったって嫌いなんだよ
肉か。
それを変じゃないかいやだ き回せないんだから。ネギ食えネギ日本人だろうが。
I've been watching a lot of Dragon Ball because of the podcast we did back in May, and I was like, oh, right, a show this old can sound fine.
Yes, TMS actually took care with their sound effects.
Not like Toei.
Oh, God, yeah. No, that sounds great. Like that, and the music was the same in both versions, too. I like that. The
very 80s.
And very
music.
Out of the library, too. But what I noticed in just this one comparison here is like they definitely on the Japanese side embellished a lot more with the in both cases they were given finished animation and then dub over it, but in the Japanese one they definitely embellished more like they're just saying things like that niku niku, like those little things.
They don't have to worry about like hitting mouth flaps or whatever. There's more room to like play around in.
And I mean Yamada really loves to play around. Plus there's in Japanese, in English he just is like, hey, save some for Fujiko, but in Japanese Lupin makes a funny statement to Goemon of just like, hey, you're Japanese, eat the onions.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I didn't understand that.
I guess these would be Japanese people making stereotypes about themselves, that apparently the thought is that Japanese people eat onions and everything and they prefer that to meat in a sukiyaki, I guess.
Interesting. I need to know more about the stereotype.
But yes, so we have this fun little food scene of just like a bunch of dingy men hanging around eating garbage together, arguing about food, and then in bursts Fujiko, badass with a machine gun, just blasting away. Like, because, you watch a regular one and Fujiko is just this like demure, like, oh, Lupin. And then she'll like, knock him out or poison him. And also she always has longer hair too. Miyazaki doesn't like doing long hair, I think in general on women.
It seems like he does like to reinvent her whenever he uses her, like the 3 times he's used her.
In one of his interviews, he said he didn't like the, quote, cheap eroticism that other people would do with Fujiko.
She also seems like less busty when he is directing her.
I mean, still busty.
True.
Yes, no.
But not like torpedo boobs.
Yeah, I mean, if you see her in the opening, her bust size is quite different from how she appears in this one. But this episode in particular feels like Miyazaki is threading the needle between badass and sexualized. And I especially think how she's treated it a little later is his commentary. I think honestly he wants people to feel bad about the shitty stuff that leads to getting a nude scene of Fujiko in other episodes of the show. So he makes it like dirtier in this one. But also another great animation, like all these shots of like bullets exploding shit.
Like lots of independently moving objects in this episode, like food and people.
The level of detail of like every cigarette butt flying out, or just like the water splashing when they're running around with their sukiyaki thing. God damn. And the great bit of business that Lupin is running away, but also trying to protect his dinner.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There's so much fun to it. And then not only that, like Lupin, his trailer gets destroyed and he finds out that Fujiko stole his car and then it explodes off screen too. He's like, well, there goes my car too.
A lot happens in like 20 seconds in this scene.
Miyazaki's not wasting time. This feels like it could have easily been like an hour-long movie of plot.
I do like after all this happens, like somebody throws a grenade at him, he just kicks it away. Like, ah, damn it.
Yeah, he's like, come on, Fujiko, you interrupt dinner.
And then he walks towards the screen, just like explodes somewhere and lights up one side of his face. So hopefully no one was hurt.
Miyazaki and his team really love drawing that specifically German kind of grenade.
Oh yeah, like the kind with like a stick.
Yeah,
it's
the plunger kind.
Like the ball, like sort of like the bowling pin. It seems more. I don't know. It seems like it's easier to throw than like the little kind of ball grenade.
Yeah, we in America fell behind the Germans on that.
It's more fun to draw and watch, anyways.
Those are the same grenades that got thrown at the car in Cagliostro.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, they probably also were like, well, we have the character designs for this already. Why don't we just use that? But yes, Fujiko gets taken off screen and it then cuts to her being a damsel in distress. And Miyazaki hates damsels in distress, I think. So I feel like this whole episode is for Fujiko's story is a parody of them, that she thinks she's going to be victimized the entire episode. And instead, she ends up saving herself.
She does most of the hero work in this episode. Like 80% of it, I think, is her.
She gets all the cool shot. Like, other directors would have been like, yeah, and then Lupin gets a machine gun and blasts away people. Like, no. Fujiko does that. Like, in this opening scene, though, Miyazaki, he has her stripped naked, and she's in various forms of nudity for most of the episode.
Always bottomless until the very
Yes,
end.
yeah, which, maybe it's them having their cake and eating it too. I wonder if Telecom was told, like, hey, sex up Fujiko a lot. We have to have one Fujiko topless scene per episode, so get to it. I mean, I felt dirty looking at it. Like, this wasn't like a shower scene or whatever, or other ways of getting Fujiko fan service.
I think what helps is that she's not scared.
Yes, yeah.
So that helps the scene.
But the circumstance of her, like, at gunpoint stripped naked, like, that just feels way dirtier, which I think is Miyazaki's intention. He wants you to feel bad about this. Yeah, the way she is drawn with such confidence, like, she's, again, naked and being held at gunpoint. She has no power here, and yet she is, like, just fully confident, like, oh yeah, what's she gonna do?
And the boss is like, they don't take it any further, thankfully. The boss is like, well, Lupin will show up, so we'll just wait for him.
They tease a more horrible thing could happen, that the henchman says, like, maybe I'll ask your body. And then the guy is like, whoa, this isn't one of those Lupin episodes. Stop right there. No. And I feel very certain that Naoto Oshima, the designer of all the Sonic the Hedgehog characters, was definitely a fan of Lupin and knew this episode.
Yeah, this guy is such Robotnik type.
He just is Robotnik.
Yeah, he's got like the glasses, the hair, the body type. It's all going on with him.
And like giant schemes with the flying fortress too.
Oh my God, he's flying the sky egg or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Later on in the episode, when via a smaller plane they catch up to the giant plane, I was
Tails
like,
is flying it.
Exactly. It felt just like the Sonic 2 set piece. So I would assume Oshima would be like most Japanese artists his age, and they were hardcore fans of Lupin III, like, and heavily inspired by it. I couldn't find a source on that, but like, just look at this guy. He's Robotnik.
I've never seen another character like that before.
And like, Miyazaki had done big bushy mustache guys before too, but not of this shape, who's not also like a doctor. They call him Hakase a ton in it too. So Fujiko is being held at gunpoint, and the villain of this episode, Lonenbach, again, an evil German, he's convinced Lupin's going to come for her anyway.
Yeah, according to the map, it's Lonenbach, and according to the Crunchyroll subs, it is Rambaha.
Yeah, that's...
It sounds like, I don't know, like it maybe what the katakana for his name is different in Japanese than Lonebach, and they're adapting that and didn't see Lonebach. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what his name is, but according to the subs I watch on Crunchyroll, it's Rambaha.
Well, those subs suck. They're
really not very
bad
good,
subs.
no.
Yeah, let me just say, the ones on the Discotheque DVDs, way better subs, very professionally localized. I have the feeling those subs on Crunchyroll are a lot older and dustier and just pulled out of the closet. Well, also, like, the Japanese pronunciation of a German word is different than an English pronunciation of a German word. So you have a borrowed word into Japanese that then has to be reset in English. And it's a
game of telephone, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your words there.
And so we then cut to Lupin in a boat, and it's a classic Lupin building a contraption scene, basically a sequel to one Telecom did in both Mamo and Cagliostro. I just love seeing the scenes of, like, Lupin at a desk working on stuff. It has the feel of an animator planning out things and drawing stuff.
Yeah, I love the clutter and like the cramped style of this scene.
You feel the tightness of the space. Yeah. I also like Jigen kind of is Lupin's secretary. I've seen a lot of folks have fun with like the relationship of Lupin and Jigen kind of being coded as like a man and wife. Like, he's very much a work wife type guy. To a degree, I think Miyazaki saw himself in Jigen. Like, Jigen is the hard worker who does the things for the big planner, as Miyazaki did for Takahata in their previous working relationship.
He's very no nonsense.
And I think, too, Jigen, like, he has the facial features and acting that I've seen other Miyazaki stand-ins be given, like Porco Rosso, for example. I also love how daintily, when he's getting him his mug of coffee, Jigen with like his middle finger and thumb kind of just placed down the mug.
Yeah, and I think we forgot to mention like Fujiko left behind this device in the sukiyaki. This she tied like a little pink ribbon around it.
That's very cute, the extra bit of dropping it there. Yeah, that to leave a clue for them to chase after. And yeah, Lupin figures it out instantly because he is like a James Bond level genius. He knows everything.
He knows nukes.
And yeah, he knows exactly how an atomic bomb briefcase would work. I love as they figure out that these are made to make miniature A-bombs. The imagining the atomic bomb like robbery is really cool. I think it definitely had a specific cultural intention of showing a mushroom cloud and then Goemon saying, I don't like this.
Yeah, it's only like 35 years ago in Japan, probably?
Yeah, in 1980, 35 years earlier in 45. So yeah, it's a memory for them for sure. Also, in this, Miyazaki's villains show what he hates in the world. And like, this is nuclear proliferation and hyper-capitalism. Like, that's who the villain of this is.
He's corrupting those gentle airplanes.
You're right. Oh my God. I hadn't even considered that. You're right. This Porco Rosso and The Wind Rises are both about the beauty of flight and how it's destroyed by war machines and the monsters who control the things pilots fly. I can't wait to do Porco Rosso someday because it really is just about Ghibli as a company. But also then in the 155 episode, the villains in that are eviler versions of Lupin because he hates how other people do Lupin in a way he wouldn't do it. And an overzealous military are the villains in that. So that shows Miyazaki is editorializing a lot there. Also, I like that in 1980, Lupin doesn't need to Google something. He just asks Jigen, like, hey, where would this be? Oh, it's probably here.
He's the Alexa of the crew.
He knows everything, that Jigen.
So I guess in the new translation, he's Ronbach.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not going to call him Rambaha anymore.
So Miyazaki, of course, sets the next scene in an airfield full of his favorite old aircrafts, foreshadowing Porco Rosso, where he'd indulge even more in that. When they arrive, I love, the plane docks very aggressively. As far as you know, it's Zenigata. But if you pause it, Jigen is the pilot. You just see him, but it's only drawn to be seen for like a second.
Because I bought into the Zenigata lie for a long time. And again, like if you're coming to this new, it could be alienating, but it's like, yes, it's established that Lupin can perfectly disguise himself as other characters and everyone buys it immediately.
He can fully become him. He has not only world-class prosthetics, but also can imitate his voice perfectly, which it struck me like in Cagliostro, in this episode, and in episode 155, Lupin imitates Zenigata. He becomes Zenigata every time. And I wonder, my guess is Miyazaki loves the character Zenigata, and he's like, we'd have more scenes of him if Lupin played him.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And just like, let's not humiliate him either, because he has respect for cops, this Miyazaki.
I get the sense with Zenigata that he's like the one good cop that Miyazaki wished exists more of.
He's like the salaryman cop.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like completely defeated and, overworking.
And also like tasked with protecting evil people and then finding a way around it. Like, Zenigata's big moments in Cagliostro is when he throws off what Interpol tells him to do, and he's like, no, we have to stop this evil guy, even if he's the rich guy you're all friends with. And I think Miyazaki wishes that existed in real life more. And also, Zenigata is not so easily tricked in this either. But I love how this scene, when you know all the reveals, how this scene plays out is great, because Zenigata arrives and he says, knowing him, you might have already been infiltrated. Like he's already bragging, like, yeah, probably. But Professor Robotnik already knows it's him. He's called Zenigata already.
It's funny that watching the scene, it's not clear that something is up when until Zenigata knows that it's like, oh, atomic weapons, It's like, oh, wait a minute, okay.
When he says atomic weapons, it is off-model character acting for Zenigata, which in a lesser animated episode, you might think like, oh, is that a fuck up? But no, this is when they do on-model stuff for Lupin in Zenigata's character model, and it's the tip. Like, that's a great moment. So they have a little chat on the Albatross. At first, I thought it was just a reference to the Spruce Goose or Hercules that Howard Hughes made, which it is. But also, it's apparently a real plane that did fly as well, a different plane. I'm going to thank Mike Toole for this one, too. The Dornier Doe X.
Okay.
They only made 3 of them, and they were used as troop transports in World War II. But they could do transatlantic flights, and they were these giant planes. They were much better flying than Howard Hughes' Hercules. And the design is much closer of that, the Dornier Do X is much more similar to what the albatross looks like than the spruce goose. But
the albatross is a fine bird. I enjoy them, but you shouldn't name something that. It's kind of an omen.
I mean, it has to be a rhyme of the Ancient Mariner reference to call it the albatross,
for sure.
right? Yeah.
It's like calling your ship the Titanic. Just don't do it.
I also noticed in second rewatch, like, they set up this table so much because this is Fujiko's dress for the rest of the episode.
The tablecloth, yeah.
Like, there's an insert shot of the tea being delivered on the table, and I'm like, why do we need that much detail in this? And it does set up her future dress. And then we get a reveal. He reveals that he's Zenigata. He rips off his mask, and I love the animation of him talking with his mask.
Oh, yeah, the Joker did that earlier. What a cartoon.
Yeah, that's true, but with actual flesh.
Yes.
Also, the fake plug that he then, like, squishes in his fingers. Like, there's so much, like, great just physics to it. You can just feel it. Dr. Robotnik reveals that he has Fujiko. He's nicely given her a top to wear, so she's only bottomless, and Lupin pervs out about it and immediately gets punished for it, which is good, at least. He's like, oh, hey, you got her naked. I like it. And, of course, he gets punished. But the amount of stuff in that ashtray she throws, though, implies she was chain smoking like the last 12 hours.
Gotta do something when you're in that captive room with no pants on.
The way Robotnik, you can see his eyes when he looks at Lupin to say, like, I know you love her, because that also feels like Miyazaki saying, like, in other episodes, if Lupin said, I don't care, kill Fujiko for all I care, you might actually believe it. But Miyazaki has a much more romantic heart, so the character calls his bluff, like, no, I know you love Fujiko.
There's a moment where, like, Zenigata, like, tries to lie to Lupin. It's like, oh, yeah, Fujiko wants to break up with you, and Lupin is actually hurt by that.
He's like, I almost believe that.
Yeah.
When Robotnik, I'm just going to call him that for the rest of it.
I mean, his name is Ron Bach, so Ron Bachnik.
Ron Bach, when he reveals to Lupin that he knows he loves Fujiko, that's when you see his eyes. Like, the rest of the time, he has the classic Coke bottle drawings over that don't show his pupils. But when he gets candid in the episode, that's when you see his eyes. And it's a really good, like, little extra animation trick with him. And that's when he reveals he knew Lupin was coming and was just pretending to be Zenigata. He called the real Zenigata already. And the real Zenigata appropriately arrives shouting, Lupin! Lupin!
As soon as Lupin is ejected out of the cockpit of the Albatross, right?
Yes, yeah. That little ejector seat is a really fun extra there. And also, Lupin hits the ground, like, so painfully. Like, his neck's broken.
That should kill him.
But yeah, I could listen to, it on a loop, hearing Zenigata just scream, Lupin! Lupin! And then there's also great animation as he chases him into the water as he flies away, like the way Lupin, like, kicks him in the face, like, hey, let go of me. Come on. One of my favorite localization things they do is having him call Zenigata Pops. Like, he just is Pops to me. I know it's like Oji-san, like, is what he says in Japanese, but Pops is fun.
Old man.
Hey, old man, what's up? See, him saying old man in English, it wouldn't feel the same as Pops.
Pops is more friendly.
Though, obviously, the no fun police of Japanese translation into English would complain of, like, you should call him old man. He doesn't say Pops. It'd be only okay to localize it as Pops if Lupin said Popsu.
Oh, what the hell?
But no, I'm glad they keep it as Pops. Yeah, then as Lupin is chased away in a really fun flyaway scene, we then see Rongbach explains his plans to Fujiko because he is the villain of an episode of Lupin, so he has to explain his plans.
I'm only going to appear once, so let's get this out of the way.
One of my favorite bits is when he explains it, he does a little act out of flying.
He's like twirling around.
And he even kind of loses his balance when he does it too. That's just like a little... That feels very Otsuka to me. Like, in his documentary, he talks about, like, no, think about how the real weight of this would be. Like, don't just have him keep the physics in there. So when, a heavy set guy with a low center of gravity tries to spin around like a ballerina, he kind of loses his grip a little bit.
And all the bombs are his lovely children.
And
that he's going to sell. It's sort of like a Metal Gear style thing, like selling nukes to world powers.
Yeah, I feel like Kojima watched this episode too. And of course, because he's a villainous jerk, he also wants to marry Fujiko and make him his wife. But
his first wife.
Yeah, though, again, other villains in darker episodes of Lupin, they don't want to make her his wife. And so I'm glad this is a more, fairy tale style.
Before we have relations, we will marry in a church, of course.
Yeah. Then they cuts to a bit of an extra scene of them going to an agreed upon handoff of the starter for the ignition for the A-bomb and Fujiko. And I like the little joke. They're like, oh, Goemon's not here because there was women's underwear on the flag.
He was saluting his shorts, or sorry, Fujiko's shorts.
And Goemon hates women so much to seeing a bra. He's just like, no, thank you. But also, they need to explain why Goemon isn't there because there is no way the cops would get them if Goemon and his unstoppable sword weren't there. I also kind of like that Lupin is bringing her clothes. It's a joke, but it shows that he's not like a complete perv. He's like, I feel bad that she's naked in chains.
It's actually
interesting
interesting that Lupin is helping her get dressed. Like, I brought clothes for you to wear to stop being naked.
It's the opposite of how he treats Fujiko in a lot of episodes. When they go for the handoff, Lupin says a very important thing there too in the localization. It was in the subtitles, thieves don't lie. Like, that's his stance, because I think that sums up Miyazaki's like view of Lupin's code of conduct. Like, he's a guy who's like, look, I'll steal stuff from you, but I'll always tell you the truth when I'm stealing stuff.
He's a Robin Hood.
And then Zenigata reveals that he was Fujiko the whole time, kind of turning the tables on Lupin, imitating
crazy
him.
to imagine that middle-aged man dressing up like Fujiko.
Yeah, I mean, the mask has to fall off him almost instantly. And then they have to like jump to a bunch of action, because the more you think about it, like, wait, how could that be a convincing mask? On a lot of Freudian levels too, him posing as Fujiko.
Oh, yeah.
Think of that. But all the cops exploding out of the thing and just jumping on Lupin.
And making the boat like sink a little bit. Yeah.
So good. Yeah. And in one of Miyazaki's, I think his first episode of Sherlock Hound, they basically redo this scene.
I think that was his trick for a long time, or like his like coup de grace, like the thing he was known best for was just like, I can make a bunch of things run out of a thing and pile onto another thing.
Nobody likes drawing. Having 5 characters in a shot is rare for TV, but what if dozens of characters exploded out of nowhere? I heard Mike Toole say this, that apparently it was Miyazaki. You know, we all think of Zenigata always having a bunch of Japanese cops with him everywhere he goes. Apparently that was a Miyazaki edition from Cagliostro that every animator kind of went with after that.
I like that. It's just like has this like meat wall that follows him, just like wall of faceless cops. He can just throw at anything, like Pikmin almost.
Yeah, they are just nameless, faceless dude. You know, when he mentioned that, like in Mystery of Mamo, it is Zenigata is on a lonely quest for Lupin. Like, he's more of just this sad Don Quixote style guy chasing after him, instead of Don Quixote as Sancho Panza. So even he's alone. Yeah, and so giving Zenigata an army of dudes, that's really different. I also like so this was in the non-Crunchyroll subs, so maybe it wasn't there for your subs, but Lupin says to him, man, you Showa era guys don't know anything about science.
Oh yeah, that was not in my
it's good because
I think he says like, oh, you're too old to get this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's more specific, the Showa era thing, but which also makes it like the okay boomer, like Lupin okay boomers.
That is great.
And even the acting on the way Zenigata says, like, you're trying to tell me this is for a nuclear bomb. We all know that they're really big. And he just does like this big arm motion to indicate really big. It's really cool. But that's when Zenigata tells him that Fujiko broke up with him over the phone. And when Lupin reacts like, I almost believe that, you can see that he has like, he's been put in handcuffs on his hands, feet, and neck. Like, he has multiple on his...
He's like been hogtied almost.
Yeah. Well, because as they explain in the next scene where they're together, Zenigata's like, I've done this so many times. I have to fully lock you down. And even does like a full strip search. So at the very least, you know, it's fair. Fujiko got strip searched, and now Lupin and Jigen did too.
And I like how he's done this enough where it's just like, okay, I'm going to pull off your fake foot, see what's in here.
But he's also like, you know what, I'll be nice. You get to keep your boxers and your hat, you know? And for Jigen, his hat is his most iconic thing. I think he would definitely prefer to have that than underwear. He's like, no, you can take my underwear, leave the hat.
He's got the nice like long johns. Jigen.
And meanwhile, Lupin has his iconic boxers. Like, I also wonder, you know, I think maybe it's 20 seconds of on-screen time in this episode. Lupin is wearing his red jacket. I wonder if Miyazaki's like, hey, red jacket's not mine. I'm not doing that.
Interesting. You're right about that. Yeah.
There's much more red jacket in Miyazaki's second episode he directed. But yeah, the way Zenigata is written with such competency that he's like, okay, the fake foot and strip him clean. Obviously, like, he knows all of Lupin's tricks by now. But who was he to expect that a fake wig that's a bomb would be on his head?
The wig bomb was unexpected.
I also like that when he takes it off, Lupin says like, hey, you did it, not me. I didn't want to explode that. And when they run out, it is meant to be a recreation of the Monte Carlo heist runaway as well.
Except that they're like handcuffed together.
Yeah, that's the coolest part, that they are so in sync that they're handcuffed together on their arms, but also if you notice, both of their legs are handcuffed together, so they basically have to take with each of their 2 feet a step each as they run.
It's more obvious as they're like running towards or away from the camera, towards because Goemon shows up to save them. Of course,
it's so cool, and yeah, of course, Goemon was already waiting, and in one slash, Goemon removes their chains and cuts through the pier as well.
And there's a boat waiting there for them.
Yeah, Goemon is that badass. I think that bit was animated by Otsuka because he did the Monte Carlo chase before, and he loves, in the documentary I watched, Otsuka was asked, like, oh, could you draw something? One of your favorite things to draw? He's like, oh, I love a Goemon slash. He goes like this, foof, foof, foof. Then the impossibly gigantic plane starts to take off, and it's on its way. Then we get the eye catch. There's so many great Lupin eye catches. Him bucking up, rolling through a car is a funny one.
I do like that one.
Then we come back to Lupin is chasing after the Albatross in a boat. You get a great like shot from the back of like Lupin's billowing boxers. You can really feel the like speed of the motorboat moving.
He can't have a billowing jacket, so that's got to work.
And which also lets you see like a little of a bottom butt cheek as well on old Lupin there. When they realize they can't catch up with it, there's such a cool shot of like Lupin, like in a tiny version of him, like just jumping and trying to reach it.
A lot of trying to grab on the planes that are taking off in Lupin. It's a bad idea in general.
They all know they won't die, so they're like, obviously, I'll just jump onto a plane and be fine.
If I want to land this boat, I can just crash it into whatever I want. They take a boat, like hit a wave and like just land where the museum is, and they just jump out of the boat because they know it's going to collide with a truck that's parked.
I know. It's constant movement. The second half of this is just like a constantly moving chase that they even don't, like, they must have been thinking while making it like, well, it's boring to see them park a boat. Fuck that. Like, it launches in the air and then crashes and they never stop moving. And as they're flying through the air, too, it feels like a very Otsuka touch to me. Like, you see Lupin cinch back up his boxers because they're starting to fall as they're flying through the air.
It's a nice little detail.
They're searching through planes. You also see them like fuck up some crappy old planes. And then the plane that they get in is a real plane as well. There was only 2 of them ever made. And
now there's one.
Well, and the real life plane was made and designed by Jiro, the main character of The Wind Rises.
Oh, man.
So, 33 years before he releases that film, he's already referencing.
Soon you'll know the story of the man who made the plane Lupin flew.
Though more famously, he made the Zero plane that flown all around World War II to great effect.
Don't ask what it was doing.
Yeah,
that was a mistake.
Yeah, look, Miyazaki doesn't like what that plane was doing either, but he appreciates the design of it. Then as the plane takes off, Zenigata arrives. I love how he's just like stuck. It looks like him and the cop car are the same drawing. Like he's like a turtle kind of stuck out of the top of it. And as the car chases it as it's lifting off, I feel like in Sherlock Hound, they pretty much recreate that scene,
it's like
too.
in the opening, right?
Yeah. Well, the opening's a clip show, but
but it's like one of the shots in the opening. It's like they're on a bicycle chasing a plane.
Yes,
I think, yeah.
And so that one, you get even more fun of the physics of a bicycle, like rolling down a hill at the same time. Pops holds on to it. Zenigata is able to stay. And I like that Lupin is nice, like, hey, hold on, I'm about to turn, because he doesn't want Zenigata to fly off the plane.
Zenigata was hanging off the autogyro in the movie, right?
Yes,
That's what I thought, yeah.
So a sequel to that scene, too. I mean, Miyazaki, he's like George Lucas. It's like poetry, Robotnik is hanging out with Fujiko, and he's trying to put the moves on her while still keeping her in chains and with no pants. And I love the posing on Fujiko's smugness of like, Lupin's coming. Like, come on,
She's having a drink. It's just relaxing without your pants on.
I also like earlier in the episode when they cut to her, regular damsel in distress in a lot of other cartoons, she'd have been like, oh, I'm so scared. But when it cuts to her, she's like, oh, I have a moment alone. Okay, get my hairpin out. I think I can pick these locks. Like she's always trying to get away. She's always proactive and in motion.
She does the damsel act or like the sex appeal act for like 0.5 seconds before she just, drops it entirely.
Yeah.
She could have taken it a lot further to like seduce somebody into helping her, but she does it for like so briefly in this episode.
Well, I'm reminded too, like Miyazaki's Fujiko, she has more realistic proportions, but also Fujiko in other episodes, she's drawn to like have heavy lipstick on, and she has very light lipstick in his design for
She's
her.
like, don't tart yourself up like that, Fujiko.
And
you're beautiful just the way you are.
So they're talking, they get alerted that Lupin is here after all, and he leaves Fujiko alone to go take care of it. You see all these henchmen running around inside, and it really, like, Nausicaa and Laputa both have scenes very similar to this, as is a giant plane shooting missiles at a big plane and then the smaller plane dodging all the missiles. Nausicaa pretty much just recreates this sequence in it. Then we get like such a cool scene. Jigen not only like shoots missiles out of the air with a gun, but also to make it even cooler, he does it with a gun he stole off Zenigata, and Zenigata's like, "Hey, why'd you take my gun?"
It's like, "Oh, you're out of bullets," and he just sits back and relaxes.
Your gun sucks, loser.
Lupin ultimate pilot, just piloting around all of those exploding missiles perfectly.
Yeah, Lupin is the expert at everything. It's like when you see Batman do something and that with other characters you might ask like, well, how'd he do that? But you know, they're like, well, of course Batman knows how to fly every airplane, duh. Like, and you say the same thing about Lupin. His hyper competency has been proven pretty well at this point. All right, so then we get the coolest bit of this episode, like Fujiko's escape. So total badass.
She's ordered to go back to that like captive cigarette smoking room, and she's like, "I'm not going back there." And that's when she's just like, "What does she do?" She's like, does a sex act for like a second. The second he gets close, he doesn't even fall for it. He's like, "Come on."
Well, and she also has her legs slightly open, which, you know, like it is obscured by the tablecloth, but you know what that guy's seeing. And that pulls him in just close enough. So within 5 seconds, she does just like a perfect, like, knockout kick to his face and catches the gun in the same hands. And then she instantly goes like, okay, shoot off chains, grab this tablecloth, wrap it around me.
And like takes off like through the plane. It's hard to describe because like she attacks people in a different way. Like every person gets attacked in a different way.
So cool. She beats the shit
she
out of
doesn't shoot anybody in the head.
Yeah,
when she's got that gun. The gun was just like a key to get out of the shackles.
Yeah.
I'm saying I like it. It's cool. I mean, it's totally a Miyazaki thing where it's just like, well, no, she shouldn't murder people.
No.
And all the people escape when the plane crashes.
Everything's a warning shot in her stuff. It's all animated predominantly by Kazuhide Tomonaga, who did some of the best action in Cagliostro as well. And this definitely feels like, you know, the type of action, like, remember in Nausicaa when she goes ham on the guys who killed her dad? Very similar feel to that scene. So again, she's written as a buxom backstabber in so many stories. And for viewers to see her go like, no, I saved myself. I'm killing all these dudes. I wear clothes. Like, this is what I do.
guess the other Fujiko, the non-Miyazaki one, might say like, well, I'm going to take these bombs and sell them now.
Yes,
you know?
yeah. Which she, at the end, she does kind of want to do.
Oh,
that.
that's right. Yeah, with the design. You're right.
She steals the design, so she's still a little of the Fujiko, the evil.
She wouldn't just take the bombs.
I mean, you can't hide that in your hair. So
that's true, unless you were Marge Simpson.
This whole battle on a huge plane too in the last few episodes of Future Boy Conan from '78 has many similar shots that also were animated by Tomonaga. So I think he's kind of cribbing from himself there too. But it looks even better here than it did in Future Boy Conan. Future Boy Conan looks great for '78 TV animation. She is a total badass for all these scenes. And then they have just a little bit of comedy that she's like, oh, I got to get bottomless again real quick to wave as a flag.
Quite cheeky.
Well, speaking of cheeky too, like when she runs, you get a little flash of cheek as she runs as well.
You know what? Not to be a pervo, but I was like, I wonder if these animators snuck anything in. 'Cause she's kicking a lot of people without panties on, just wearing a tablecloth. No, it's all above board.
That's good. That's good. And it goes from all these guys who were holding her captive and yelling at her. They are now running from her and being blasted at with a machine gun. It's such a great twist.
She's running to that like gunner's station or whatever.
Like she's pointing the machine gun at them in the opposite direction into the plane.
I like how she had to take out the guy at the opposite wing. She like just throws one of the missile launchers at him. He doesn't fall out of the plane. I thought someone was gonna die for this entire episode. I was like, no one's dying. That's great.
I like that he just goes like, and then just plunks over, and the gun is still firing for a second. Yeah. Also, the Telecom team, like, they animate these grenades just being thrown around, and when she flings it back at them, like the way they go like, oh, they're just trying to blow it away.
It's like rotating in midair slowly. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. So cool. And that explosion then loosens up the engine, which then flies away, the first of the 5 engines, and great physics to that, not just like flying away, but also it's so well observed. Like if a plane loses one of its engines, then it struggles to fly and it kind of dips a little bit. It's you can really just feel it's just the realism of it in this ridiculous show is great. And I also like when Robotnik gets extra pissed off, he has his like bundle of German grenades, and then she shoots them into pieces like with perfect marksmanship. Again, that's the kind of shot that Jigen would take in other episodes, but they give it to Fujiko.
And that's how Zenigata and Lupin see it's like, oh, the plane is making the bombs. It's like a plant.
Yes.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense, but okay.
Sure, a mid-air plant. Why do the nukes need to be made in a plane? Just make the nukes and then bring them with you.
I guess it's a good cover, you know?
Sure,
just have a giant plane. It's a big space, and you can make things inside of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they have a giant-sized plane to make small-sized atomic bombs. And once they lose a couple engines, it's all going down. Robotnik tells his henchmen, like, just get out of here. You can leave if you want. It's over.
And Lupin knows the plane is done for, so he uses it to sort of saw off, like, two of the propellers.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's another, like, one of the best shots in the episode of him flying, smashing his plane into the two more engines, knocking them off. But then it arcs up and like, oh, we're out of gas. And then it starts falling back down like, damn. Like, it makes it look easy. The amount of physics it figures out, like, it just feels natural. You're like, I'm watching a plane flying. This is how planes fly.
These planes will all be CGI now, not a hand-drawn.
Sadly, yeah, you're right. Except in a Miyazaki thing, he'd still make people
He'd
draw.
crack that whip.
They'd make him draw it again and again.
I have not seen The Wind Rises. Are all the planes hand-drawn in that movie?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought so.
There's if there's any, I barely recall if there's any CGI in it. It's light, like in Mononoke. Then we get some fun business of even seeing all the henchmen jump off with parachutes, and they all do it in like unique ways too. I like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. They all get off. It's fine.
No one dies. No one.
Presumably, Zenigata arrests Robotnik.
As soon as it lands, he arrests him. Yeah, but the plane crashes into where Fujiko is in the bigger plane. And they have it's great comedy of like Fujiko waking up like a princess, and you think Lupin's like waking her like Prince Charming.
And then the zoom out is like all the debris and people on top of him.
Yeah, they're just all covered in crap. And also like Zenigata is the only fully dressed person there too. All the rest are in their underpants, which is just funny to think of this as like the underwear episode. I think of this as the airplane episode, but now after watching this, like, it's the underwear
Everyone
episode.
Is half naked, every main character, except Zenigata.
Then they take over the plane. They're going to try to take control of it. Lupin realizes it's about to crash, and I like how he like smashes his face up against the window as he looks down at the Alps. Which I wonder if that's like an intentional reference to Heidi of the Alps. Like, those look exactly like the Alps.
He didn't like those climbers. I guess the thing is they need to land in the water. The harder impact would kill them and also explode all the bombs.
Yes, yeah. They basically destroy Sweden, I think, if they or whatever European country they're in.
I guess skipping to the end, I mean, we'll talk about the other stuff, but like I felt like it was a slight ripoff that we didn't get to see the landing of the plane, but I was like, I think they spent enough money that they didn't have to draw this.
That's true. They embellish so much that they don't, like, it is taking it the one way they took it easy. They're like, look, you assume it lands, everybody. Yeah. As they're trying to make sure it doesn't crash, I like that Zenigata says, like, Lupin, I won't arrest you while you try to land this plane. He makes it clear, like, I will arrest you later, but right now, I'm not going to do it.
But they have to, like, lighten the plane as much as possible because they have to get over the mountain and into the lake.
Yeah.
So another great scene of so many things flying around because they have to take things out of the plane and throw them overboard.
All these objects have to, like, not only be drawn realistically for you to recognize, like, a fridge or a couch or whatever, but they need to then fall through the air and look like the wind is blasting at soaring altitude. That was the bit where I'm like, this feels like an assignment to new animators. With like, all right,
how would a couch fall out of a plane?
I'd think about it. Okay, now a character throws a safe out. That's heavier than a couch, right? Draw it this way. Like, it feels like an intentional challenge for sure. And I do love the funny gag of all the stuff almost hitting the mountain climbers. And again, the level of detail on that never would see in a TV production then. No way. And we then get to see, in a very Robotnik scene, he gets caught trying to escape with all the nukes.
All of his children.
I like that Zenigata, I think for plot purposes, Zenigata can't land with them because obviously he'd arrest Lupin. So you got to separate them. So such a smart way to do it is Zenigata sees this guy trying to leave with nukes is, in this moment, more dangerous than Lupin, so I'm jumping out of the plane with him.
Maybe it was just my subs, but it seemed like he still didn't believe they were bombs. Was that like
yeah,
a joke?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is him still being stupid in that way of just like, no way, these can't be bombs. I like that he challenges the guy like, if they are bombs, blow them up, prove it to me. And he's like, but I don't want to die. Again, in a darker action show, the main villain would blow himself up or whatever, but instead they go with comedy of him going like, no, I value my life too much to kill myself. I'll just be arrested. And also the great animation of like the little bit where Zenigata is holding on by his feet in the doorway and like he's biting his upper lip going like, grrr.
I thought he was going to pull him back in, but...
but instead they go flying off. He's got him in a headlock. Then the episode ends in a cute way of Lupin and Fujiko and Jigen celebrating their victory. And that's when Lupin, he finds where she was hiding the schematic. So Fujiko still, she had her own plans still.
You think it's going to be a tender moment, but it was really just him putting his arm around her to like pull the little like blueprint out of her hair.
Yeah, but he then hands to Jigen and he just tears it up. And
lots of things hidden in hair in this episode. Bombs, blueprints.
Yeah. God, the way that hair bomb explodes, it kind of shrinks up from being a wig into just a circular like cartoon bomb and then explodes.
I forgot to mention like all the haircuts that Fujiko has in the intro song. She's got like an afro in one of them.
Oh yeah, God, all of her costume changes. Like that's what's so great about Fujiko. Every other character, Goemon, Jigen, Zenigata, Lupin, basically all the same costumes. They rarely do costume changes, and usually it's for a scheme. But Fujiko like will dress different every episode, you know, or sometimes it's a catsuit, sometimes it's a dress. Sometimes it's nothing, like in this episode. But it's a very Miyazaki Lupin moment that he gives her a very gentlemanly kiss on the cheek after revealing her plan. Like that they have a much more mature relationship.
It's very chaste.
Yes. But this is the last clip here. I just really like the sounds Yamada makes as he catches Fujiko's plan. And also the outro music here I really love. So I want to play the whole thing.
うひょー怖い紙切れ発火プラグの設計図だぜ次元捨てっちゃいなさいはいよ
Good time.
And they might land. Okay.
Assumedly they did because they have adventures in the next episode. 155 ends with them similarly going off into the sunset, but even more with finality because it was known as the final episode. And this is the fourth ending of the Part 2 series. It's Love is Everything by Noboru Kimura. And all of the Part 2 endings have love as the theme and usually feature Fujiko.
Fujiko, yeah.
Yeah, not unlike how on Dragon Ball, the ending was the girl hangouts. Endings are for girl characters.
Girls having me time.
Girls just finally
sitting around and thinking.
They get to relax after all these adventures. Yeah, it's a great theme. And one of a lot of Part 2 music has English lyrics to it too. A lot of the vocal songs. There's one called like Superhero, which is the parting song on 155. And the original version is in English of a guy going like, I'm a superhero.
Well, technically the opening song is in English too.
Oh, yes, that's true. That's true. Or maybe French, I suppose, if they just say Lupin.
They say Lupin III.
Okay, then yes, you're right. You're right. But that also gives Lupin the international feel that makes it so attractive and darn fun. But yeah, this was... Man, what an excellent episode that is like very Miyazaki, but also still a Lupin adventure of guns and sex.
And like Castle Cagliostro, it will ruin the rest of the series for you.
100%. Yeah, you can't, if you watch a regular episode, like I watched one called Everybody Loves Ramen, and it's a good episode.
Oh man, what a good title.
It is, yeah.
Wowzers.
But it has much less reality to it. I feel like Lupin's tricks here make a certain level of, obviously they wouldn't work in real life, but you can think like, oh, a hair bomb. Well, I guess that makes sense. But in Everybody Loves Ramen, where for no explained reason, Lupin replaces his body with a balloon that explodes when they try to put it to death. And they're like, oh, it was a balloon. And I was like, how?
Yeah, there's a little bit of magic in some of the other plots.
Yeah.
And like potions.
Which this has just, obviously, though, you know, in real life, no person could perfectly imitate Zenigata in the way that Lupin does. but it's described with just a sprinkle of enough believability that you're like, fine, I buy in. Other Lupins maybe don't give a shit about that.
I don't have any picks myself, but I'm sure you can go online and be like, what are the 10 of these I should watch? Because there's like, what, 150 something?
155 of the first series.
And then again, there's a Discotheque Blu-rays and DVDs, and there's also Crunchyroll, which is like Crunchyroll, you pay $5, you immediately can watch every Lupin thing ever made, except for the movies and OVAs.
Yeah. And if you have Hulu, a lot of them are on there too. So you should check out all those. There's so much great Lupin out there. I mean, I think another good starting place would be look up the list of just the other episodes Telecom did that weren't directed by Miyazaki. Those are really great episodes, even without, the level of quality that Miyazaki, demands with force on his stuff. Don't be like a lot of folks who only watch the Miyazaki Lupin stuff, which is all we've done too. I know.
Yeah, we're turning into those people like, I don't like anime, but I watch Ghibli movies.
Yes, yeah. You give a shot to the rest of the series too. Definitely Discotheque's DVD sets of these are the best. I didn't get a free one or anything, I'm saying, but
we should get one after this.
But Discotheque is my favorite U.S. distributor of
me too.
anime.
Yeah, they're
100%. Great. Yeah, they really care. So yeah, I guess that's it for Lupin III Part 2.
Happy 40th birthday to this episode and 80th birthday to Lupin, however old he is. But thank you for listening to What a Cartoon. If you want to support this show and get all of our episodes 1 week at a time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And when you sign up, you'll get just that, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. Once you sign up, you'll get access to everything immediately, everything we've been doing for the past 3+ years. That is over 100 bonus podcasts. So that includes all of our limited miniseries. The most recent one that we're, I think, still going through as of this point, we're recording this in May, is Talking Mission Hill. We're going through all of the only season of Mission Hill with the What a Cartoon / Talking Simpsons treatment. But there's so much more at that $5 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Over 100 bonus podcasts that you've never heard if you're listening to this on the free feed. And Henry can tell everybody what's happening out there at the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. One extra long podcast once a month just for patrons.
That's right. In addition to all the $5 stuff Bob mentioned, you get a monthly What a Cartoon movie podcast where me and Bob talk about a different animated feature film, some usually for up to and over 4 hours. Some of our most recent ones were Toy Story 2, and if you really enjoyed this one, you gotta listen to our one for the Castle of Cagliostro, the Lupin film, where I go much deeper into the history of Miyazaki and Otsuka working on this series as well as its creation. So if you really enjoyed this one, you definitely want to go to the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons to hear that movie.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. Find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. My other podcast is Retronauts, the classic gaming podcast. Find that wherever you find podcasts or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. Sign up there and get 2 bonus podcasts a month at patreon.com/Retronauts. Henry, how about you?
Hey, you can follow me, Henry Gilbert, on Twitter at HENEREYG. Anytime I do new stuff, I am sure to tweet about it there, and you should be following the official Twitter account of the Talking Simpsons Network. That is at Talk Simpsons Pod. Anytime there's new podcasts on the Patreon, the free feeds, or if we're doing something cool, you'll learn about it there. So please follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter.
Thanks so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes episode, New Avengers, and we'll see you then.
行く先々で仕事の邪魔をする奴がいる。それも天才少年とかいうガキだ。ついにこの子とどちらが大きいダイヤを手にするか勝負することになる。次回ルパン華麗なる敗北。また会おうぜ。